All right. Hey, everybody. We are, wow, it's only 10 after, man. I don't think we've been this close to 7 o'clock in a long time.
I mean, I would love to make a comment about it, but...
Well, I know, but I wasn't ready to talk to you yet.
Okay.
Go ahead. What were you going to say? Oh, I got the wrong one, see.
I'm not surprised that you picked the wrong button.
Hi, everybody. It's Monday night, 7 o'clock. That means it's time for the Yard Sign, the most important relevant podcast in politics. Jonny Torres, your host as always. Thank you so much for wherever you may be watching from. We are getting ready to have a great show for you tonight. We have a lot of great topics. We have great guests, and certainly lots of insight for you in regards to the news and politics of the week. So let's go ahead and run down our topics. Okay, as I said, we got a special guest. We'll introduce him in just a moment. Also, DeSantis has the best week ever as he scores a 3-Peat in a special session last week. We'll kind of break that down. And then we're also going to get into Elon Musk and his purchase with $44 billion of the social media platform Twitter, which I'm sure that conversation is going to be fun, given that our special guest has probably been on Twitter as long as I have. So that should be fun. And then we'll go to our senior foreign correspondent, Anibal Cabrera, for an update on Ukraine versus Russia and see how things continue to develop over there. All right, let's go and get started. Over to the table on my right. On the far left is Anibal Cabrera. No,
I don't like that.
Well, it's my far right.
I don't like that at all.
On the far left is the far right, Anibal Cabrera.
I feel really disgusting saying that I'm on the far left.
Scoot in, by the way. You're like hugging the wall over there.
Well, I'm trying to hold it up.
Oh. And joining me in the center for the first time in the, I think what it's been, like 3 years of this podcast,
Sure.
We have Jamie Miller. How you been, buddy?
I've been doing great. Thanks for having me.
Man, this is so awesome. Thank you for coming up all the way from Sarasota. That's truly an honor to have you up here and make that trip up here.
It's a short drive. I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, we've had, we've talked to Joe a couple times in the show, and we've talked to Christian Ziegler, who are the chair and vice chair of the Republican Party of Florida, but they've never actually physically come to the podcast. So you've got one up on them.
We'll have to fix that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you've some of the first Sarasotan on the live
That's
in
right.
studio.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
I will make sure they know that.
We had a manatee.
Rub it in, please.
We had a manatee.
We did have a manatee.
Manatee doesn't count.
I completely agree with you, actually.
That's a drive-by county.
Yeah, that's too far from the interstate to the beach.
Exactly.
Through county. What are you talking about?
Well, and I mentioned those names not only because they again are from your home county of Sarasota, but they also are currently in the leadership of the Republican Party of Florida, which you were the former executive director of.
Yeah, sure was. I worked at the party for the majority of 1998, going back a ways to through 2003.
Okay, cool.
So part of the Jeb revolution, I started working at the party right after the House and Senate takeover in the state. A lot of people in politics don't even remember when Democrats were in charge.
Right.
And I said we had
not counting Charlie Crist.
I talked with someone else in Tallahassee this past week when I was up in Tallahassee during the special session, and it was pretty amazing because it was, we have a whole group of political consultants and candidates who have never really had to deal with Democrats in charge of the state.
Yeah.
And so
Nor do we ever want to.
No, we don't. No, we don't. It was bad enough when the old pork choppers had it, right? Like
Yeah.
but
Well, they don't know how good they have it. I mean, we've got some guys out there that are screaming like we aren't far enough to the right. And, again, they don't know how good they've had it for, the past, what has it been now, 12?
It's been a lot of, it's
16 years?
Yeah, it's been 98 since we've controlled
Yeah,
all three branches.
wow.
So
That's amazing.
what was that math real quick? 24 years.
Well, give us a little bit of
Math
perspective.
on the spot, Johnny. What are you doing to me?
I'm sorry. He doesn't know his manners.
It's like taking an SAT.
Oh my gosh! No, and I'm the
He's
worst
our
in
guest.
math.
Be
Yeah.
nice. Gosh.
So give us a little perspective. What have you seen as maybe the biggest differences, from then till now? Because again, we're riding on the coattails of the Jeb Bush era governorship of Florida, which led to this conservative stronghold.
Yeah, without question, it's been the ability for every activist to have their own audience. From a formal standpoint, I think the Citizens United case is probably the biggest thing that happened in politics in the United States. Really, if you want to talk about the business of politics in the past 25 years, which allowed corporations and rich people to basically have their own political parties.
Yeah.
And so that led to kind of the failure of the infrastructure of both major political parties that you kind of see now, where they don't have the same strength within their own parties as they used to, which I think is one of the reasons why we've led to, not that you wanted to go here, but led to the division we're seeing in this portion of our history right now, is because in the past, the political parties would grab somebody, the Democrats would grab an AOC, or the Republicans would grab a Matt Gaetz, just to name two people, not to pick on people, but to name two people that people are familiar with. And they'd be like, okay, you've had your piece, calm down, let's get back. Let's kind of get back to working across the aisle and pushing legislation. Well, now you have groups that really just go straight to, kind of this negativity to gain press.
Well, and again, and I've had these conversations with people who, claim to be ardent supporters of the Constitution. And it's like, well, they forget that the Constitution itself was devised by compromise.
Sure.
And they forget that that's kind of how our entire governmental system exists, is through compromise. And that's not to say that, one side should bend further over, than the
Without
other.
question, right.
But the truth of the matter is that nothing gets done without both sides coming to the table. And for one side to try to have complete power isn't good for anybody.
Well, and I think over the last, and it's happened on both sides of the aisle, from a presidential standpoint, it's governing by executive order,
right,
rather than working with Congress. And I don't know that that's going to be a long-term good way for our system to hold up,
right?
Because you start passing kind of laws that last 3 or 4 years or 8 years, and then they're no longer laws when the next group comes in and
you're
just writes them away. And so it's not the right way to do it, right? And so
you're cutting out the people's voice,
right?
Which is the legislature.
Yeah, absolutely.
So whether it's the governor or whether it's the president, if they're governing by executive orders, it's not truly an entity that's being governed by the people.
Right, I agree with you. And so it's so those are two big changes over the last, let's say, 25 years.
Sure. Well, and
I've been involved professionally since '94, so it's
all right.
Been a little while.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
Well, never a dull moment. I've had my fair share of kind of every side of the tables, like I like to tell people, short of running for office myself. But I remember coming down for one of the last events before Trump announced his candidacy in 2016.
Yes.
Which is the only one that really matters, right? Because all the others were kind of, the stunts, if you will, And so I was one of those people that when I went and he was flirting with it, I'm like, he's just joshing. He's just, this is just Trump, just trying to get everybody.
2 weeks later, he came down the elevator, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly. So to give me a little bit
I actually did advance for Mr. Trump at the time.
Sure.
For that event. And as you know, Joe was the chairman, and I was Joe's vice chairman in Sarasota County.
Yeah, it was
for
the
about
Statesman
9
of the
years.
Year award, right?
And so, they gave him the Statesman of the Year. I was working at a job outside of politics, but I volunteered to go and do that for Mr. Trump's campaign. Actually had about 40 minutes with him and Corey backstage.
Wow.
So it was a very interesting
So
conversation.
Corey was already involved at that point.
It was basically just Corey and the communications.
Okay.
Her name's escaping me right now, but it's kind of those two. And then there were a couple.
Not Kaylee.
No.
Because this was on the campaign side.
Yeah. So it was. So he was running a real small shop. They were, and he actually offered me a job that night, and I was like, kind of like you. I was like, well, what for? So so by the time it kind of came down to, I never formally worked for him, but had a very interesting conversation with him backstage.
I tell people I'm very transparent about the whole thing, because it'll be one of the things I never forget. Anibal and I, in Ybor City in a pizza shop, at 3:00 in the morning, waiting for the results to come in, and until it was officially announced, I did not believe it was going to happen.
The entire room was completely quiet, just waiting for the results.
I figured, I was like, the Clintons are going to figure something out. They're gonna figure some way to scoop this.
The one part of the conversation that I had with him was I convinced him. I don't know that this is exactly true, but The Simpsons way back, as you know, the cartoon predicted his presidential coming down the elevator. And as far as I know, in the press, I was the second. And in 2011, in Variety magazine of all places, I was quoted as saying that Donald Trump could beat then President Obama because of his celebrity.
Sure.
And that's what really kind of led to the 40-minute conversation I had with him. Like,
wow.
I was like, and he's like, well, you should have brought the article. And I was like, yeah, I didn't really think ahead on that one. I did get him autograph it, but no, it didn't happen. So, but yeah.
Well, and you know, and again, it's you know, you've been active as again much longer even than I have, and it's one of the reasons, you know, that we've connected over the years, and certainly one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show for quite some time is, you know, to, you know, give your insight and give your experience into kind of how all these things have come about, and certainly with today's climate, you know, where are we headed, where are these things going, and you know, again, I'm excited to have you here.
Well, and it's interesting. Twitter, you know, you're speaking about DeSantis and Twitter, and there's an argument that we wouldn't have DeSantis without Twitter.
Well, it might be, and it might even be that you and I wouldn't know each other if not for Twitter. I mean,
that's
you know,
that's a real possibility.
A lot of the people that I know politically throughout the state, I would initially meet through Twitter,
right?
Until eventually, you know, I would come around to that part of the state for an event or something,
right?
And then be like, "Oh, you're so and so," and you know, and you kind of hit it off from there. But you feel like you've known each other because you'd been going back and forth on Twitter for so long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we didn't have the arguments.
That's right. That's right.
We were always in violent agreement, me and Johnny. Yeah.
Well, and again, I mean, just to think about, you know, everything that's transpired since, you know, I got involved and Twitter has come about. I mean, we saw again Charlie Crist, you know, and his evolution, and then we saw, you know, the rise of Marco Rubio, and then Governor Scott, and you know, now Governor DeSantis. You know, certainly never a dull moment in Florida politics.
It is not. It is not. And you know, we came so close to Andrew Gillum. People forget that that was just a few thousand votes, and just what a devastating 4 years we would have had under him.
I can't even imagine, given everything that's going on, what the state would look like in that kind of a situation. But let's go ahead and jump into our first topic.
You go, I'll follow.
Yeah, which is Governor DeSantis, who we were just talking about. You know, the DeSantis 3-Peat, I'm calling it, because he called a special session in last week. Of course, a lot of people were coming in initially because they needed to address the homeowners insurance issue, which again was not handled during the regular session, something that typically would be handled during general session, but it was not. But certainly it continues to be a dire issue year after year here in the state of Florida, especially as we see more insurance companies refusing to write policies, property insurance policies here in the state of Florida. And then I think it was a day or two before the session started, he amended it to add the discussion or the vote of repealing Disney's governance exemption, and so of course the special session got really interesting. In addition to the fact that we knew that there was going to be the introduction of the congressional maps that he himself oversaw, and so those three items really came to a head at this special session. And they all worked out in his favor. I mean, we saw, you know, they obviously addressed, you know, as well as they could, the property insurance issue. Again, no silver bullet there to kind of fix that whole problem. But then we saw the Disney lose their special governance tax exemption, and that's going to be. We'll get into that in a second, because that's a pretty robust issue. And the congressional maps were approved, you know, by the legislature. I haven't seen an official challenge legally, but we did see a demonstration by the Democrats in the legislature. They put up a big fuss. They did kind of a sit-in protest. So let's kind of start in the order we just talked about. You know, again, the property insurance issue, I don't know how closely you follow that, but I mean, again, it's Florida, right? And I think it's always going to be tough to get insurance companies to commit to writing policies.
Well, the devil's in the details, like a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, with property insurance, we've gone through. This happened a while ago in Pasco County with sinkholes, you know, where you had a lot of I don't want to say fraud, but it was fraudulent type activity, because fraud's illegal, and I don't think people went to jail for it, but very close. And then, we went through this period where people would lose a shingle in a small thunderstorm, and then they call on their 27-year-old roof and say, "Oh, I lost a shingle," and get the whole roof replaced.
Sure.
And so, so there's really some protections that probably need to be put in place for some insurance companies. I'm not an insurance expert. I don't try to pretend to be one. I like to consider myself a political expert.
Yeah,
that's crazy enough.
Well, it's funny
but
though.
I think there are some reasonable things that can happen. I know that with a lot of condos are facing issues, especially with Citizens Insurance, which is the state-run government insurance of last resort.
Right.
Where especially people with Airbnbs and things like that, they are having. They're now qualifying these condos as commercial properties instead of residential properties.
Oh, wow.
And so you end up with, instead of the residential property, the homeowners being $50,000 a year, it's $400,000 or $500,000 a year. So there's little things like that I think probably need to be looked at in a more fair way. And like I said, I'm kind of edging around topic that I really am not an expert at.
Well, from the insurance side, we saw a similar response with Uber, right, in the ride sharing.
Yeah.
Where, the insurance companies basically had to scramble to come up with a specific type of coverage for those that were using their vehicles for ride sharing.
Sure.
To insure not only the vehicle itself and the driver, but now this other person,
rider,
who is not a family member. It's not, someone who, wouldn't traditionally be in the car. Again, it's I would hope continues to be in the right direction. But in talking to Michael Beltran, who was here with us on the last show, our state representative in these parts, he says that these insurance companies will say, well, hey, if you guys do this, this, and that, it'll fix it, and then they go and do X, Y, and Z, and it doesn't fix it. And so that's the other challenge that they seem to be having with that.
Right. It's always the devil's in the details, right? And so it's, sure. I do think that in most of these things, there is a reasonable compromise that can come. I'm not the person to present that to your audience in this particular.
And there are so many people moving into the state of Florida that I think we're just going to continue to see more issues arise as more people are moving and more different layers and different labels when it comes to housing in general. So I think that's really going to be an issue.
Well, you start looking at things like, little housing. And some people, I worked 3 years with the Economic Development Corporation. Of course, affordable housing is a big issue everywhere in Florida. Yep. Really any place people want to be, right? So they're having these problems all over. But, you can start talking about things like shared yards or shared parking or those types of things for single family units, but then you run into insurance like, a kid gets hurt because they ran into a plant that somebody else right. So who's really responsible for that bougainvillea that the kid ran into after his football?
I've been there.
I brought that one out from personal experience as well, Johnny.
My grandma had a huge one outside, and literally where you had to come in to get to her front door. So it's like if she didn't keep it up, you just get the thorns and the scratches. I
had a hide and seek situation in dark where it was kind of running full blast.
Oh wow.
No, I think we're going to continue to see, especially looking in Tampa, because we live here in Tampa, that it's no longer a typical normal residential 1 unit, a single family kind of dwelling. If you live in South Tampa, you live in the core, you're now having to figure out what to do with so many more people moving into the city. Well, and having to deal with now houses building mother-in-law suites in the back to be able to rent those, and
people are renting rooms out to other people, and so then you get into
there's
those
some neighborhoods that's almost $1,500 for a 1-1. It's getting ridiculous now.
Right.
So you having more intimate knowledge about the legislature, and certainly party operations and as we were just talking about, corporations and the impact that they have on elections, let's get into the Disney thing.
Okay.
Because right now, Disney's on nobody's happy list. other than maybe the people who are out there spending thousands of dollars in the parks. Democrats.
My granddaughters, they're on my granddaughter's happy list. Don't take that away
That's
from
right.
them.
Well, my daughter too. I mean, she's 6. I mean, she loves it.
like-
I
And
mean,
even now, even if they are on the naughty list, people are still going, even though they're
Yeah.
percent. They're still
Right.
they're wearing the shirts.
My granddaughter lives
yeah.
in Colorado. She comes in, she's getting $100 little dress, and we're marching right over there.
Yeah, right.
So that's the reality.
no,
And-
it is, and the truth to be told is the boycott politics never works, and rarely does it work. Let me not say never, because it has worked in some occasions, but it rarely works, especially with a company as large as Disney. But they are getting heat from both sides here in Florida, and even in California, they had a huge protest outside the corporate offices, and so when we let's tackle this kind of from the timeline standpoint. When the parental bill rights passed, all of a sudden Bob Chapek, the CEO, says, "Well, we're going to stop all political funding in Florida." Give us a little bit of an idea of what kind of an impact that has.
Yeah, I mean, when I was executive director, there were 3 or 4 companies that, and Disney was one of them, where if you couldn't make payroll, you could make a call and say, "Hey, listen, I need $25,000 to cover payroll."
Wow.
And they've been that type of company and that type of friend to the Republican Party. And I think you could bring in executive director after executive director after executive director that would have who would have a similar experience as I've had with
Sure.
with that and a few other companies who, when the chips were down, they'd come
pony
in.
up, yeah.
They'd come in.
Yeah.
And so it's really tough to watch, right? It's tough to watch Disney going through this internal struggle of who they're going to be and who their audience is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of really tough. And, I kind of felt that, the governor won the argument, and then the CEO kind of was trying to save face to keep employees from walking out,
Right.
and from quitting.
Yeah.
And so then that then led, well, I'll let you, but I think that then kind of led to what we saw last week.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's what people were a little complex about, because I saw the governor and we saw what he did, and it was a win. Like, a lot of people wanted it, a lot of Floridians wanted it, and then you had someone that doesn't live here from California make a very interesting statement, like they're going to stop donating, but then they're also going to take on measures to combat legislation like this. And so you're like, oh, okay, so are you coming after us, or what's going on?
Well, I still think, and I don't know what their intention was. I guess we'll see their
Yeah,
intention.
the verbiage was very hostile.
The
Because
verbiage-
I agree with you. He was trying to keep face.
I
from
don't
his-
think anybody disagrees with what the governor did.
Oh, yeah.
The bill was something that came to some legislators' attention, that things were happening in schools that they did not like, mostly with older kids.
So that's the thing. The polling showed that among voters, among parents, I mean, the bill was actually really well received.
Right, and it should be. And
Despite Democrats' hardest efforts to swing this into something it really wasn't.
the Democrats did a great job on messaging, and we took a little
fabulous
while
job.
to catch up to it, right?
Yeah.
So there's always that kind of give and take, and I think there was a little bit of a misjudgment on how some of the public would see this bill after the Democrats kind of defined the messaging.
Well,
and
for
so once that definition of the messaging became "don't say gay,"
Yeah.
then that's a hard place for people to say, well, if I'm
What does that mean?
What does it mean? What if I'm
Yeah.
a gay teacher? What if I've got a gay partner? What if I?
Yeah, the verbiage was a little,
Or a gay parent.
The verbiage was very ambiguous. I will say that. I think it needs to be cleaned up a little bit. I think that's where a lot of people are harping about, because we all agree that if you are a gay teacher and you have to have a picture of your spouse on your table, that's not going to cause a violation, because it's not instructional. Like, I think
Well,
that's the problem.
I think the whole
Right.
and this may not be the word that's in the bill, but my recollection is the word curriculum, right? So
yeah,
if it's part-
instructional curriculum.
Yeah,
And that's
so if
what I
it's-
think people are.
If it's part of instruction, that means you have to sit down and define it. You teach it to
Correct.
the entire class,
Correct.
and what they're saying is these things shouldn't be taught.
Which
to
is what
children
New
under the age
Jersey ended up actually doing.
Yes.
Right.
Like, literally implementing LGBTQ curriculum for first and second graders.
Right. And in Florida, we've decided that that's not okay.
Yeah.
And so, and I personally believe the governor's right in saying that's not okay. The legislature's right. Picking a fight with Disney very publicly.
But we
you
didn't
started talking
but
about
we didn't pick the
fundraising and
fight.
corporate fundraising.
We didn't pick the fight. The Disney is the one that picked the fight.
Well, the fight was over. And so
That is true.
And so, Sun Tzu would say, give your opponent an honorable retreat, right?
Correct.
And so that did not happen. And
Well, if you want to-
I'm going to side with Sun Tzu.
If you want to be president in
Sure, 'cause-
24 or 26 or 28, then you kind of
Well,
gotta.
because the governor could have just let Bob Chapek, basically save face with the employees and just, walk off into the sunset, and not really made an issue out of it. Because really, it didn't change the legislation one way or the other. The legislation changed
Now,
regardless.
unless the governor
regardless.
had a plan, which I'm not familiar if he did or not, that Reedy Creek was something he didn't like, and that he wanted to make something. He eventually wanted to, disband that.
Yeah.
And if that was his plan from years ago, it didn't seem like it was that well carried out. Like he did it did happen, but
never, I've never heard anyone mention that there was a problem there or that they took issue with it.
I was walking around the house and leader after leader, I won't use any names because they're private conversations, but leader after leader, especially in the state house, was like, well, we're letting Disney have a year to fix it. Okay, what does that mean? Right? Like, what does
Right.
fix it? What does fix it mean? Does that mean
Fix
the board,
what?
Does the board have to fire the CEO? Are you asking them to stop production of movies? Are you asking that what does fix it mean?
Yeah.
And when I pushed back on that, that's when the
Or is it-
responses started getting a little weird. It's like, well, Disney shouldn't have gotten involved. They overstepped. I'm like, we allow all these companies to be involved in politics. They all have lobbyists. They all have a voice.
And there's
They're
been some
a
criticism.
constitutionally protected voice, by the way.
Yeah, and there's been some criticism that Republicans typically have not used legislation as a form of retaliation for politics.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough, if that's the way people want to define what happened, I mean, you could argue that that's what happened. I'm not sure that, like I said, I'm not sure where the governor and his staff's minds were.
Right.
Because if they were just kind of using the "don't say gay" to reach a goal that they wanted to have and they didn't know how to get anyway, then he made a brilliant strategic decision to make Reedy Creek part of the issue, right?
Because that was my other question in regards to, to my understanding, it seems like there's all this tax money that they were basically saving, not paying into the state, that now they will be having to pay something into the amount of about $200 million. Now, some people are saying that the state and the counties are actually going to end up spending more than that, to provide the services that Disney was basically providing itself through the Reedy Creek services. So that's where it gets gray for me. And I wonder if that's the reason why this seems maybe more like a shot across the bow rather than, because I would find it politically risky to then have to walk this whole thing back.
Well, number one, walking it back with new legislative leaders.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Senate president and Speaker of the House are going to change.
Right.
So you talk about dropping a steaming pile in somebody's lap.
Right.
If you're asking them to walk it back, why is it their problem? Number one.
Right.
So you're assuming that. Number two, you're assuming the governor wants that to happen if and when he gets reelected, which I think most people agree that he will. And so you run into this is really kind of where was this policy? How is it good policy?
Right.
And I'm not sure that it's bad policy. I'm not sure that it's good policy either.
Yeah.
And whether it's retribution or not would depend on what the governor's goals were, or if it really was. I mean, I think Disney, to your point, I think that Disney will see it as retribution. If I'm the CEO of Disney and I heard from my lobbyists that that Disney has, quote, a year to fix it, you have to kind of think, if I'm the CEO, that's maybe a target on my back.
Yeah.
And I don't think you became the CEO of Disney by being a wilting daisy, right?
Well, he was a wilting daisy when it came to him bending the knee to his woke employees.
Well, that was
it's
the
not
thing.
like they were going to have the entire Disney employment walk out. That wasn't happening. I think what happened is that he got spooked and that he thought that there needed to be some kind of comment made. And again, I think the hypocrisy of this whole thing is that you're talking about a company that has used sweatshops in the past. They're barely paying their employees correctly. I mean, the best thing that the governor could have done actually is allowed allowed Disney to unionize. I think that would have been a much easier way to cause more harm than anything else. And so I was reading articles today about how people are saying, well, Disney should move to Colorado. Disney's not moving.
No.
There's way too many parks.
They're not going
They're not going anywhere. So like that's the problem. You have a captive. This is in California, and I think the CEO tried to smooth over things that his employees were talking about, and it cost him the situation.
And I agree with you, but from a practical application standpoint, you're talking about a multi-billion, multinational company that park is a small, kind of a big part to us, but a small part to
their overall business.
Yep. And they just went through COVID where they had to go through a crisis management process. What do we do if we can't open the park?
Yeah.
So they already have a plan in place that they probably spent millions of dollars on,
right,
of their survival without the park, just because of COVID.
I'll say this: I highly
Does Florida have a plan for a post Disney?
Yes.
Oh, I don't think so.
Yes.
I don't think so
either. Do
either.
you really think that another Mecca like an Orlando or an Orange County in Florida, in California, is really going to thrive somewhere else that is not under snow half of the year? I mean, just the international travel alone.
Yeah, but that's not a plan for Florida.
No, but that's what I'm saying.
I mean, look at what happened. Look at what happened when the legislature repealed all the film incentives. Mm-hmm. I mean, the economy,
it all went to Georgia.
The economy suffered. I mean, tons of people lost their jobs. Right. You know, the housing prices, I won't say crashed, but they dropped. And you had a huge economic vacuum that then, went back to LA, and then now has primarily moved back to Georgia.
I will say this. I do agree with you that the move that the governor did wasn't the most thought through, I would say, because I had never heard of it.
It may have been. Well. It just doesn't appear to have been.
I don't remember ever hearing a conversation like that to begin with. So I could understand that. But I also understand where a CEO says like, okay, we're going to start doing things against the legislation. I think that's when the private company went too far in making those comments. And again, the governor is trying to make himself much more national.
I look at this from a practical application standpoint. So
again, there's no reason for us to have all these conversations.
There's not a Tiger Bay or a Chamber of Commerce meeting where a current legislator running for re-election says, I didn't get my bill passed, but I'm going to take it again next year, right? Because there's something else that took priority or something else. And so did the Disney CEO say anything really more than that? It's like, okay, we didn't like that. We're going to try to go out there and hire some lobbyists and change it. But if Republicans stay in charge of the governorship and the legislature, the House and Senate, they know that he's kind of screaming into the wind, right?
Well, no, and to give them proper credit, he didn't say that they were going to completely stop all political donations forever going forward. They said that they were going to stop political donations for the time being, reevaluate how they were spending those dollars, and then kind of look at how they were going to move forward. But
it'll be real interesting if they have a real reevaluation. And my fear is that there's a seismic political shift that we are in the midst of, and we don't realize it.
Yep.
Because Disney and a few other corporations in Florida could switch sides, and it changes the entire dynamic.
Well, look at what the film industry has done to Georgia.
Right.
The film industry, I believe, is single-handedly turning Georgia blue.
Without question.
And so, to validate what Anibal was saying is that the public perception is that this was some sort of attack at Disney, for coming at the governor. In fact, now this guy is biased. He works for an ABC affiliate, even though they're an ABC affiliate, but the TV station's owned by another company. But still, ABC affiliate, which is owned by Disney, so there's ties there, right? But he wrote this really long Facebook post about, what the fallout was going to be from all this. But he then ends it. He goes, the residents, by the way, had no say in this vote, no say in their property taxes going through the roof, which is his speculation, no desire to have their communities staring at financial ruin thanks to 72 hours of orchestrated revenge. Which I think is obviously a bit dramatic.
Yeah, I think the governor probably could have done himself a lot of favors by instead of doing this from a legislative process, putting it on as a constitutional amendment, and saying and taking those powers away, or that were grandfathered in through a constitutional amendment, put it on the ballot.
Being
November,
diplomatic about it,
and let voters have a say on it. My guess is that it would go the way the governor wants, just because the governor is so popular. He would have been seen as more of a man of the people versus the person here who's calling it an act of revenge, or Anibal. When you say that it appears to be retribution, like I said, if it was part of his plan, he would have been, I think, a little better served to have shared that with more of the public prior to it looking like retribution. Yes,
and that's the thing. I mean, I think because of the way it was handled, if they don't end up going through with it, and end up giving them this kind of special governance back, to Disney. Again, I think that's going to be kind of a big kind of.
Well, there are some things that Reedy Creek has, like the ability to build a nuclear plant,
right?
That's going to be taken away.
Yeah,
like they are going to take that back.
Sure.
So there's some of those things that are part of the legislation that will not be. I do not believe will be drawn back.
No, but to their credit, like they're building solar farms all over their property, which that's a great thing. And so I think, I mean, were they ever going to really build a nuclear power plant? Probably not.
But I think the fact that they even have the ability to do that. Also, when it comes to impact fees, they don't have the same restrictions as other parks in the Orlando area.
Yeah.
They have to deal with the environmental impacts. They have to deal with that kind of train, when Disney can just do it themselves, because they have, I think, yes, they have way too much power to begin with in that region.
Yes.
So I think that needs to be curtailed back. And again, let's see what it's going to really look like.
Well, and so much has changed, right?
Yeah.
They're celebrating their 50th anniversary.
For sure.
So much has changed.
That's why they ain't going nowhere.
Right.
By the way, I tend to agree with you, but what fun is a podcast without a little bit of disagreement?
Well, like Ben Shapiro, said,
this isn't a Six Flags. Let's all calm down.
Well, like Ben Shapiro said, these aren't Transformers out there that can, basically pack themselves up and move away.
I think the important thing I think that what your audience feels probably is that these decisions aren't made in a vacuum,
right?
And I think from a Republican standpoint, there's a good number of people who are like, wow, this was made. People feel like this decision was made in a vacuum, and now hopefully we haven't created an enemy out of a former friend,
right.
And hopefully the relationship can at some point. That Disney feels not good, but great about staying in Central Florida. That's what you want to do, right? Like you want people to want to be here. You want to invite people here. You want to, we have basically the busiest airport in the world over there. And
I don't think we have to worry about people wanting to come to Disney.
No, how many thousands of businesses depend on Disney? Just for merely existing, they benefit from Disney.
I agree that they're not likely to go anywhere. But
that's such a high bar to point out, to that someone actually removing, I would say, 500,000. But it's one of the largest employers in the country, in the state. That's what I'm saying. If you really wanted to hurt them when it came to the bottom line, you would let the staff unionize and allow that to happen. Now that's a whole different conversation with a whole
which they have in California.
Which they have in California, and the Disney mouse tried very hard to ensure that did not happen, and they lost that war. They actually their CEO during that time actually had to resign because of it. I don't think that's and that's why I was like, I think that's just a threat that's not even there. I want to say that they donated to both political parties almost $5 million last year when it came to public donations, and so I doubt this is a long-term effect. But again, Disney is trying to play into the game of politics, and this is what happens when you play into politics.
If Disney wanted to get involved in 2022 in Florida politics, they could very easily upset the apple cart on what was seen as 2 weeks ago was seen as a wind at the Republicans' back. No brainer. Kind of a check mark election. We're going to have these great new maps. We're going to elect some more Republican members of Congress from Florida. And
they could do some damage in the upcoming midterms, and then in the re-election of the governor.
I'm sorry. The polls show that the Floridians are very happy with this new bill. And they're very happy.
I don't have to make it about the bill.
No, that's what I'm saying. That the Floridians are already happy about their governor. They're happy that the governor's pushing back with wokeness. That's the thing.
Well, but
If
that's
you're
the thing.
if you're
Disney's not gonna come out and say, "Hey, here's all the candidates we're supporting." They're just gonna funnel the money to those campaigns.
I know, and you will be surprised
Johnny,
that the governor will do a train around Disney and start talking about how they are purposely donating to these individuals to then get out just because we took away their special provisions. Again, this is something that should not have been an issue 2 weeks ago. This is something that we're doing this to ourselves.
When I conduct polling, we all like the horse race. Everybody likes the horse race numbers.
Sure.
The press always reports on the horse race, but the thing that matters in polling is intensity. Mm-hmm. If you're not measuring intensity, and so what I've learned over my more than 2 decades now of political polling is that once somebody wins an issue, that side is no longer motivated really by that issue.
Right.
So the governor won this issue. And so now he's motivated the opposition on an issue on which he's won.
Yeah.
And the intensity it doesn't matter the issue, doesn't matter the party.
Right.
When you win, one side becomes less intense about the issue and the other side has the ability to become more intense. And so, and by that, I mean turnout, donations, all of those things. And so I felt like this was one of those moments where you won.
Right.
It's an election year. You're 7 months away from a slam dunk election. You didn't need to do it.
Yeah.
You didn't need to do this at this moment in time. You could have still made the point next legislative session in time for the presidential race, in time for all these other things.
Right.
And
and
I'm not sure that it changed the current.
No.
But I think some political people who are looking at this thing objectively would say we took a complete wind in our sails, wind at our back election, and we turned the ship a little bit. Does it turn completely all the way into the wind? I doubt it.
Yeah.
Because there's not enough time.
Right.
But we're assuming that Disney does nothing. And they may do nothing. I don't know what Disney's going to do, but if they decide to do something, that still tilts the ship a little bit more into the wind, regardless of what that is. If they decide to do a lot, they can turn
it. Okay.
Well, what a lot of people also don't realize is Bob Chapek is under a lot of pressure. He's under a lot of heat because even before all of this, there was a huge petition by cast members all over the world who want to see him removed from office. They don't like the way he's leading the company. They don't like the direction that he's been taking, the company since he took over. And this just adds kind of more fuel to the fire. And I wonder if his response to all of this was a way to try to win some of them back, that has now backfired on him. But the current Disney employee, the current Disney universe, especially among the theme parks, is not happy with him at all. Yeah. And I wonder if, again, that might have fueled some of his response to this in general.
When you're dealing with $40 million a year guys who are worth $700-800 million, my guess is they don't go quietly into the night.
Yeah.
And so whether that's internal or external or what it may be, my guess is that Disney will. My guess is that they don't just sit on their hands and do nothing. But
I think that's exactly what they might do, honestly, because
they could.
If either decision is going to be detrimental, you're going to do it to where you're going to kind of probably piss off some of your employees. So I honestly think that Disney just is not going to do anything. They've seen what happened when they did weigh into politics, and that's what's happening now. So I in my opinion, I don't think they're going to do anything.
Let's kind of close out the topic here real quick with the congressional district maps. We've looked at it kind of roughly, here in our area. I mean, I feel it certainly has made, it's made panelists pretty much almost a sure thing for Republicans, I think.
Yeah. Anna Paulina Luna in what, 13? I think that's it.
Yeah.
That's what, yeah.
Well, she's currently in the lead. I don't know, but she could implode her own campaign. But anyways, you also got 14, which is Castor's district, which now is looking more red leaning. It's blue. I mean, but it's certainly kind of moved slightly more to the center, to kind of make it a toss-up. Any kind of big changes like that down in Sarasota? I mean, you guys are seemingly pretty safe down there.
We did not. Vern Buchanan's district moved slightly north, so he's completely out of Sarasota County, comes up now into a little bit more of Hillsborough, which he had Manatee and, a little bit of Hillsborough, which was mostly Sun City Center
Yep.
type area. And so I think he comes a little farther north and east.
Is he going to be going against Scott Franklin?
No.
Okay.
Scott Franklin is.
No, that's
Scott Franklin will be the middle
16.
seat from Lakeland
That's
South.
what I know that I'm looking at the maps now.
So it would have been Greg Stubbe. 17 will now be Greg Stubbe.
Okay, Greg
and then
So is he 18?
18 is Scott Franklin. Yes.
Oh my God, that's all the way to the lake, to the Great Lake.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a huge.
That's a big land. Well, Greg Stubbe had most of that land,
Yeah.
and he kind of condensed it into Sarasota and maybe that little bit of Charlotte. I'm not sure if it has that Charlotte area in it or not. But
So 17 is looking pretty good. What are your thoughts of 14, 15, and 16?
So 14, you'd have to tell me who's in each one of them.
So 14 is Kathy Castor at the moment.
Yes.
She's into that one, and that's predominantly Tampa, but still downtown St. Pete.
Right.
So
But,
that
I mean,
is
my
still-
guess is that's
Well, and
is
it added this whole kind of west of 41 sliver. You know, so that's now includes.
I thought that district was still
Riverview,
like
Ruskin,
58 or something
Sun
like that.
City.
Was it that?
The majority
strong?
of that county, yes, the majority of that district is still mostly
yes.
Democrat.
But now you have West Chase. You have West Chase, and all of the northern part of Hillsborough County, which is very Republican.
Right.
So,
So
I
12
think
is
that's where they picked up.
Billericus is what we're looking at here, and then
He loses Tarpon Springs.
yeah,
That's very weird that they took out Tarpon Springs from him.
yeah. But
Well,
you
they
have-
wouldn't have that. I don't think they'd really care about that kind of a local.
Yeah, but he does. That's his.
I'm sure he
that's
does.
His base.
Yeah.
But he's not going to run in 13 because of it. It would be my guess. That would be very interesting if he
run
did.
in 13 right now. Who would want to run in 13?
There's too many people in 13.
Yeah, and then so like one of the big ones that are running in 14 right now is Jay Collins, who is a retired military man that's running for that as a Republican. And in 15, the big one in that race at the moment is Jackie Toledo, who was
Right.
a House committee woman, a House representative, a Florida House representative at the moment. So I think these are the races we're
Yeah,
loving at the
and
moment.
I think and that's the one with Dennis Ross, the former congressman.
Yep.
That just jumped in, yeah.
And
But is he now in
interestingly
15 or
enough, his
16?
former chief of staff,
He's
Fred
going to be
Pick-
jumping into 15.
15. Okay.
And allegedly, we might get him on this podcast.
Yeah,
Well,
that'd be
yeah.
amazing.
His former chief of staff, Fred Piccolo, is now running the race for Jackie Toledo. So which
okay.
makes it a little bit of an interesting wrinkle
Piccolo,
in that
Anthony,
race.
I thought Anthony Pedicini was helping.
Yeah, so there's but
Fred and Tom.
Oh, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
Fred was announced, I think, today as her campaign manager and senior advisor. So,
Oh wow. Which he was running
what's
house
that?
campaigns in Tallahassee, wasn't he?
he was the governor's communications director, and he was communications over in the speaker's office for two speakers.
Okay.
So
then was it Tom that was running house campaigns?
Yes.
Okay, got
Yeah.
it. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, kind of get those two mixed
Right.
up, but well, yeah. I mean, do you think that there's going to be? I mean, it doesn't seem to me, at least for now, that there's going to be a viable legal challenge to these maps. I mean,
I mean, I don't know that viable is a strong word
Yeah,
because
that's-
I don't know that when you look at these maps, they are pretty condensed. They are.
South Florida is just a hodgepodge.
But it's really not. I mean, it's no worse.
No,
than,
you can see
there's a
you can
couple
see the
of-
neighborhoods.
But
where
they
it's
tried
from.
to get rid of a lot of these little strips and a lot of these little.
there's a
kind of-
couple.
20 is quite interesting still.
Yeah, 20. There's a couple in there that are. But if you look at the map as a whole, the
Geographically,
real
it's only
the
so
real
much you can
argument
do.
was
The way it was Jacksonville, that was
the real argument was that you took away an African American majority district in North Florida, and but we kind of put that back into Val Deming's former district is now a 40% district.
Yeah.
Right.
And that wasn't originally drawn, I don't think, as an African American majority district. An African American happened to win it, and so and then several of the districts around Orlando became much more Hispanic majority. I think the Darren
Yep.
Soto district went from, not necessarily a minority district to I think it's maybe 60% now.
Oh, yeah.
Hispanic district. So if you think about how the practical application of Florida's growth and maybe losing an African American district, but majority district, and gaining a Hispanic majority district,
Right.
that might be indicative of what's really happening in Florida.
Yeah.
And we
so-
also have the example of having African Americans in Republican districts win in predominantly white districts. So it's no longer that just because it's a white district you'll have a white representative. No, you have our friend from
Byron
Naples.
Donalds.
Yeah, he is a African American that's won in a very majority Caucasian district, and so the argument isn't there.
Well, Jennifer Carroll won in a white district. J.C. Watts won in a white district. I mean,
Right.
let's call this what it is. It's
Yeah.
gerrymandered for an African American Democrat.
Correct.
Yeah,
And
right.
so they don't like that. And even though the Fair District Amendment says that you cannot draw the districts based on party, that's exactly what an African American majority district becomes, is a
Sure.
Democrat district, and with no chance of a Republican ever winning it.
Yeah.
And so
Which has
their
been the
own-
case here in
Their own
14.
argument, all the arguments they made for fair districts can be used against them.
Correct.
Right.
For each one of these legal
Which is
arguments.
why I don't think it's going to get challenged.
Yeah.
Well, I think it will get challenged.
Yeah,
I don't know
you're
that we'll see how
Be
far it goes.
successful.
Right.
Yeah.
So some of the
All right.
comment sections that we're having, Jay is outraising Cassie Cather. Thank you, Kim Davison. Jackie is second in fundraising in her district at the moment, in District 15. Anthony is local, so people are liking the fact that Anthony is jumping onto that campaign. And what was the other one? I'm just gonna read it. I'm not gonna. This is not my opinion, but boobs and hair everywhere in District 13.
What?
Boobs and hair in District 13.
Oh, God.
It's predominantly female candidates that are running in that district.
Yeah. Audrey Henson got married over the weekend.
Oh,
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Great timing there, running for office, getting married.
It's a tough road.
It's but hey, congratulations to her. They had it looked like a pretty nice, kind of low key, casual wedding ceremony. And
Do you know where it was at?
what?
Where was it at?
No, I don't remember.
I didn't get my invitation. Did you get
Yeah,
an invitation?
no.
Okay.
And then, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out. I mean, obviously very drama filled early on, and some of that has calmed down a bit, but Amanda Mackey and Anna Paulina Luna just pushing really, really hard. I haven't seen polling lately on kind of where those chips fall, but
I don't think anyone was doing polling until these lines got solidified.
now I'd heard a rumor, and I'm going to throw this out there to see if maybe you heard
Oh,
it.
boy.
Look at his
Here we
face.
go. Look how
Look at
happy.
his face.
I was going to say, look how happy he got.
Christmas morning.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, I
Because if
heard.
we can't speculate on this show, then we can't speculate anywhere. I had heard a juicy rumor. Well, and this is one of the few people that I think would hear it, even down in Sarasota, given that, even though it's not, again, within your geographical area.
Yeah.
But I had heard that there was a possibility of a current Speaker of the House possibly jumping in that race.
Yeah, I think that speculation has existed for some time now.
Okay. So you'd heard it.
Yeah, I don't know that that's.
Obviously, we
But
haven't
I don't
seen
know.
anything
I don't know
to
how
lend
much of it
credence
is
to
a rumor or
Yeah.
he's
I mean, he certainly could.
everything publicly.
He lives in that district.
If
Yeah, of course.
if somebody has the ability to raise a lot of money quickly, my guess is that they could, and they're known.
Yeah.
My guess is they could be very competitive very quickly in that seat.
Well, and the argument has been from a lot of people that race needs an adult in the room.
I didn't say that.
No, people did not say that,
Did
but
not
I've
say
heard
that.
that from a lot of people. Given all the drama and the theatrics and that, don't worry about that.
Well, I'm in the business of talking to adults, so I'm
It's-
going to end my comments there.
Yeah, well, and so honestly, I think that if that were to occur, I think to me it seems like he would instantly kind of just suck all the air out of the room and be the likely nominee on the Republican side in that race.
I think there are a couple people who could probably do that. I don't think that the people who are in that race are seen as unbeatable in
No.
a primary or. I think that in the general, the way it's drawn, it's very
names.
likely.
I've heard other names, but none as strong as that one.
Yeah.
That to me has been the strongest one I've heard.
When is the last day? Is it May 15th? Is the last day for?
June.
Is June? I
Same
thought
as
the petitions had
state
to come in.
qualifying. Same as state
I thought the
qualifying.
petitions had to be in like mid-May.
Oh, your petitions maybe, but anybody
but-
running
yeah,
for
but
Congress
petitions,
will pay.
Yeah, they'll just start the check. Yeah. All right, cool. All right, let's move on to a slightly, and I do mean only slightly less political topic, which is the big news that Mr. Elon Musk, Mr. Iron Man himself, has shelled out $44 billion and
That's not
has successful. What do you mean that's not true?
The bid that he has put in is $44 billion.
That's which has been accepted.
He himself will be putting in about $15 to $20 billion. He's not putting in $44 billion.
Okay, but he's at the head of it.
That's
I mean, that's the dollar sign. That's going to be the figure at the bottom of the check.
Yeah, no, it will not be. It will
with
be
other people's money.
with other people's money.
Yeah.
No,
yes.
but that's what I'm saying.
He himself is putting in
the price
15
tag,
to $20 billion.
Right, but the price tag is
A
44.
few billion here and there. That's not that big of a deal.
I mean, between
Still-
friends. I mean,
it is what it is.
Regardless, if you can,
I love
if
that
you-
you're here now.
if you can motivate a couple of friends to meet your 15 or 20 with another 15 or 20,
to save the republic,
That's-
what are you going to do?
that's
yeah. Who knew our democracy was
pretty
so
impressive.
dependent?
Would you agree with that?
If you have the money and someone comes to you that's building rockets to Mars and to the moon, I'll chip in just to be in that room when things happen. Like
Safe
that.
to say, if I had any kind of money, I'd pretty much. I would trust Elon to do whatever he wants with it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, at this point, so $44 billion, the valuation comes in at just above $53 a share,
Which is the best price it's ever going to get.
It hasn't been any
But it's
higher
not-
than
but
that
honestly,
in years.
I was going to say, isn't it just 18 months ago that it was trading in the mid 50s? I don't think it was that long ago.
It's ebbed and flowed. I mean, it's Anibal kind of looking and pull up the numbers, but
Looking at it real quick.
you're right. I mean, it's not like it's never
It's not
been
an egregious. It's not an egregious overpayment. Is in my point.
No, but
is my
over
point.
time, as the platform has failed to kind of evolve and has failed to increase in numbers, it's kind of plateaued really, and has failed to address issues like fake accounts and and then of course all these other dramas that have transpired over the years.
These companies are going to have a real hard time, as there becomes more competition in the marketplace, where you can have a forum on TikTok or wherever, right, and where you can create your own metaverse, or you can go on the metaverse and do that sort of thing, even though it's in its infancy,
right?
There's still enough avenues that when it's an odd strategy for me to tell a user, I want you to put content there, and then your content's not allowed.
Right.
Because people are only going to put up with that for so long before they decide to go somewhere else with their content.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, I mean,
so what's the, one person's great quote is another person's whatever,
Sure,
illegal
yeah.
quote. Let's
Right.
just call it illegal,
Yeah.
And so,
Well, and that's going to be the interesting part, because obviously his intent, supposedly, is to really open this up as a free speech platform. And so does he then continue to abide by some of the boundaries that have been put in place by, let's say, Middle Eastern countries or China or, some of these other, where Twitter has really bent to the will of these governments to appease them, so that they could operate in these countries. Or are they going to keep some of those boundaries for the sake of operating in those countries, and maybe push the envelope a little bit to open it up? Even though his primary target is the United States.
I think both. I really think both. I think first of all, having a board that has only less than 2% of Twitter stock in there to begin with means that you have a board that has no vested interest. So you heard reports today, just fire the entire board. The CEO of Twitter, the current CEO of Twitter, told employees on Monday that the future of the social media firm is uncertain and is heading towards a dark path. So
that's coming from the guy who said that he didn't believe in the First Amendment.
Exactly. And he's about to lose his job. That's what needs to happen. I think it got too technocratic. And I think if you're unwilling to make sure that the rules are applied evenly to all, then it just creates chaos, and that's what happened. That's what occurred.
Well, people were criticizing.
You can't kick out Trump and have the Ayatollah it still have his account.
Yeah,
that
right.
makes absolutely no sense. A man that's literally has thrown gay people off roofs. You still have him on the platform, but you're upset that Trump did something. No, that doesn't make any sense at all. And I think that is the only way. And I'm okay with it. People are like, "Oh, you shouldn't have billionaires buying these things." You have billionaires buying newspapers all day long.
That's basically the American
It's
history
the only-
101.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
there used to be 2 newspapers in every town,
Right.
and one was Democrat, one was Republican.
Yeah,
basically,
right.
That's how
basically.
it works.
So
That's how it works.
Well,
we're just in a different.
And
era.
the more I become just learned about, our American journalism, the more I realize that there's actually truly never been genuine, pure objectivity. William Randolph Hearst, who again created the media as we know it today, basically started these platforms, whether it was the news in the movie theaters, whether it was newspapers, whether it was television, whether it was radio, basically to serve his agenda.
Well, and even Edward R. Murrow or Walter Cronkite, kind of the golden age of news, they still added their own editorial content.
Right.
Later in life, they asked Walter Cronkite, "What's the number one news story you wish you had led on the air that you did not?" Which means everybody knew that he was keeping stories off the air.
Right.
And he said Woodstock.
Oh, wow.
Whether that seems like an interesting event, but it's probably not the most important thing the most culture
It was
type
culturally
event.
symbolic.
Culturally symbolic,
But not
for sure.
really newsworthy, maybe.
Yeah.
At the time.
Yeah,
Because
so-
again, people probably just saw it as a concert and they're like, okay, what's the
Whatever,
big
a
deal?
bunch of kids.
Yeah, sure.
Bunch of whippersnappers.
Kids being kids.
But I mean, you've been on Twitter. I mean, I've been on literally because Twitter will tell you. I've been on since April of 2007.
yeah.
I'd
I'd have to go look, but I was on.
You were early on too. Yeah, I
very
remember
early.
you being on really early. And I long for those days. Like, I remember when you could talk to celebrities and people that were out of reach, and they
live
were so
events.
accessible.
Yeah.
They would actually respond to you, and they would actually. Now there's obviously so much noise.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. But I remember.
I always
getting
like
into,
Twitter. I think Twitter's one of its greatest strengths is in times of calamity. When Scully landed the plane in the Hudson River, I watched that on Twitter. It was the first live news event that I saw on Twitter, and you put hashtag plane crash, and you would just see people from New York, pictures from their office buildings of this plane before it even crashed.
Right.
And it was insane. Like, it was literally gives me chills to think about, because that was kind of like the first. And that was one of the times where I was like, wow, this is a powerful, powerful platform.
Well, I
And then I just
remember.
got lost. I got lost in just kind of everybody yelling.
Yeah.
Like, I like to be on Twitter during debates, as you know, and
Right.
I live tweet
the live
debates.
tweets are amazing,
And so,
Yeah.
but at the same time, like, for me to go on a Tuesday afternoon and argue with people is not something I really want to do.
I think that's what took a lot of the fun out of Twitter. Again, I have never been on Twitter. My wife only lets me use one social platform at a time, and it's Facebook, and that's all I'm going to go. She's a very smart woman, so I'm going to abide by what she's asked me to do. But at one point, it was as high as 77. So 2021 was actually one of its best years ever, with a height of $77 per share, and then it just dived to about $35. And this was during, I can't really see where it's at right now, but or in January it was at $35. So it has definitely, it's one of its.
So it hit its height under Trump and its low after they cut him off.
It was
Imagine
during
that.
the Trump
Right.
administration. It was going high. It was going up and up and up, and then you could tell it's taking a dive. And I think people are just upset. And so there was an article today talking about how you had and this is going to sound frivolous, but you had the Kardashians, and back in the day when you first got on, you would be able to enjoy the conversations. You could be able to tweet to different people and get it. But as their star and their universe expanded and grew, it got to a point to where you wake up, you have 50 comments, negative comments. Who wants to do that? Who wants to read through that every day? So might as well just get off of Twitter. And you've had that situation where people have gotten off Twitter because it just gets too negative. And I think what really needs to happen is that, one, you kind of need to either get rid of the bots and to where you don't have that situation anymore, and people have to verify that they're an actual person. Once you have that scenario, I think it makes people more, they understand, okay, they recognize me as a person, so I need to be at least somewhat.
And you're talking about
hospitable.
spam bots, because there are some bots that are actually useful, but then you also have, for instance, there was the account, I think it was called Unusual Whales or something like that was actually tracking. They would post anytime a congressperson made a trade on the stock market, and so it would say Nancy Pelosi just traded blah 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 for this and that, and then Twitter went and shut it down. So they got so invasive, that I think that began to turn a lot of people off. And again, who stupidly goes and bans their biggest client? I mean, Trump basically was the Twitter president.
Right.
And in fact, if you go and watch there's a documentary, I think on Netflix, about him. I think it's Donald Trump, the American Dream or something like that. He talks about Twitter being one of the primary reasons he decided to run. Because he realized that when he would put out certain statements about, agreeing or disagreeing with what was happening politically, the response was overwhelming and that people generally agreed with what he had to say. He felt that, okay, this might actually be a viable thing that I can pull off.
Well, I go back to my comment that I, said with Variety magazine.
Yeah.
We've always elected celebrities.
Sure.
We have a long history of electing celebrities.
That's right.
Especially if you include generals as celebrities,
Yes.
right? Which
back
they
in
are.
the 20th century, that definitely was a thing. Ulysses Grant. I mean, we really did elect military.
Garfield was.
That was a big deal back then.
Eisenhower.
You go through the, Teddy Roosevelt, you're going to go through this list. And then, you kind of had some celebrities. Roosevelt was a famous family in New York, right? So,
the Kennedys.
The Kennedys, right. Yeah. So so it's not unusual that, okay, this celebrity, well, then he captures this audience and he was able to bypass and have more people kind of read and share and his ideas than watched his, a 30-second sound clip on ABC News Nightly. So you're right. I think he realized that he could take his message directly to the American people.
But I am excited to see what Elon's going to do with the platform. I mean, not even just from the free speech standpoint. Obviously, I think that'll bring a lot of people back to the platform. And again, I think that's part of what made it interesting is that you could find just about anybody and everybody on it. Now, again, I'm not saying that there's certain people that shouldn't be on the platform. Yeah, there's terrorist organizations, Antifa for one. There's again the Ayatollah. There's certain people that probably don't belong on Twitter. For the overall good of the world.
But even then, there should be some level of however they try to do it, whether that's a homeland security. You've broken. You're.
I mean, if you're a head of state, then
if you're not if you're a threat to homeland security, then there might be a role for that to take place.
But Putin's invading Russia, and he still has his Twitter account.
Right.
The man is committing genocide, literally, and he still has a Twitter account.
I mean,
but
I think the hypocrisy is a big thing, and it has to that has to stop. So whatever they decide to do, like you said, is if you apply the rules equally, then it's okay, I'd be more involved because I just don't want to go, and I've never been shut down by any platform. I don't know how, but I've never been shut down by any platform. But I tend not to be mean. I tend to encourage people talking, and if you come on my Facebook, all my socials, you saw it up on the screen, is at RepJam. That's where I am at all of them. Facebook.com/RepJam. Everything's RepJam. So it's so it's just I enjoy the conversations. I enjoy the dialogue with people who disagree, but we have to bring it around to some level of reasonableness.
I think that's what usually upsets so many people is when they cannot figure out why they're getting banned or why they're getting shadowed, censored, or why. And when you don't make it even for everyone is when people start getting upset.
Well, and I'm on Facebook, and I'm pretty sure I get shadow censored.
I've never been banned either
because I wouldn't even know it. I just know that when I post something, 90% of the people who comment are people who just follow me. So it's not really 3,000 people I'm taught that are friends of mine or whatever. And
it's a fraction of
literally it's just a few.
I think it's less than 10%.
I think for me it's way less.
And I think that's what upset a lot of people.
1 or
about
2%.
What Twitter had become was that it is technically the digital version of a town square.
Yeah.
And that sounds great and that sounds awesome. But when you start curtailing people, censoring people, is when people start getting upset. The best idea should be given the opportunity to rise up and be able to be discussed and talked about. The fact that we can't have an open discussion while people getting so upset that it turns into violence is something that as a nation we need to start talking about and start thinking how we're going to move that forward. But allowing Twitter to become private, I think might have been the best thing.
It's bleeding into our lives, our real lives,
Yes.
more, where people are taking this screaming that they're doing on social media and applying it to their car,
Yeah,
or they're
right.
applying it to, in the grocery store or the restaurant, and we start treating people,
Well, and
like
I think the
we're
problem-
in this social media context versus, hey, this is a live person.
The problem for many people, not so much us because we're involved in the process, but I found this one before I got involved. I'll tell you, because this was kind of the escalation. I felt like I had all of this pent up opinions and frustration and things that, I didn't feel were being said, and again, this is super early social media. And so then I started blogging about it. And that was a release. And okay, so that kind of let some air out. And then I realized that wasn't enough. I felt I just felt like I had all of this energy that I had nowhere to release. And it wasn't until I got involved with the Young Republicans, with the local Republican Party, that I was like, okay, now I feel like I'm actually accomplishing something. I feel like I'm actually helping to kind of move the needle here. And that's actually where I found my own political views and perspectives. But I think for a lot of people, again, it's come to the point where now social media isn't enough. It's not enough,
nor was it ever going to be
of an
enough.
escape valve.
I mean, now people say if you want to give the least amount of attention to something, tweet about it, or
Right.
or happy birthday on their Facebook page. Really, use my Facebook page just to tell me happy birthday when you can just send me a text message or a call.
Speaking of which, happy birthday to Scott Levinson.
Hey, oh yeah,
Our good friend Scott Levinson, who's running for county commission.
yeah. He turned 67 today.
He turns 87. What?
I think it was 112. I don't know.
So just
There might have been
he better
dinosaurs
not be
around.
watching live, but
No, he's not. He's already asleep. It's already 8:00.
Oh,
So that's
poor
what
baby.
happens. Yeah, they gave
All
him the
right.
pudding and he's done. So some people are saying that actually the hearse got America into the Spanish-American War. I think about that. They were perfectly happy when the Washington Post was purchased by an oligarch. Really.
The hearse actually was the one who structured the New Deal.
Oh my gosh, that's true.
He was the one that basically conceptualized it, and then Roosevelt was the one that kind of stole it and put it out there.
Some are asking that, do you think if Elon Musk will share the algorithms, especially going backwards? I think that would be really cool to see if he does an open source. When he does that, it does great things.
Well, and
he's never had a
I just
problem
want
doing that.
a free flowing timeline.
Yeah.
Back to the old school free flowing timeline, the chronological timeline.
Some are saying, do you think that he'll start charging for tweets?
No.
I think there might be a different ads have to go somewhere. I mean, now that it's
There'll
private,
be features.
maybe not,
There
but
may be
yeah.
features that get added on for a cost, but I don't think they're going to charge per tweet.
Yeah. So those were the questions that people were
I mean,
talking
it
about.
still needs to make some money, even though that's not his objective, or he
It
claims
still
that's
makes
not.
like $4 or $5 billion a year.
Yeah. I mean, it's so I think the business model will probably largely stay the same. But again, I think if he adds in, one of the things a lot of people on Twitter have always wanted is an edit button.
Yes.
and being able to go back and edit tweets, and obviously they would have to make sure to record those tweets.
Well, you have that on Facebook now. Like you can
Right.
edit, and then if you really want, you could see what was edited.
Yeah.
And it's usually just spelling error. Well, it's spelling error.
Yeah, but it's I mean, hopefully they'll kind of bring back some of the better things that they got away with, that they did away with.
Interestingly, George Clooney has one of my favorite quotes, and it's about Twitter. Or probably my favorite quote by George Clooney is about Twitter.
What's that?
And it is, he wasn't on Twitter. I don't know if he's on Twitter now.
I doubt it.
I don't think he is. And they were like, "Oh, you have to be on Twitter." This reporter's like, "You have to be on Twitter." And it's like, "Why aren't you on Twitter?" Well, I make $20 million a movie. Would you risk that over some stupid you would
right.
say you would say at midnight after a bottle of wine? I don't think so.
Oh my gosh! Yes, that's so true.
That's right. We've seen many a career ruined thanks to social media as well. All right, Anibal, going to our senior foreign correspondent, Anibal David Cabrera, here with our Ukraine versus Russia update as we're running quite a bit over time. What's going on with the situation over yonder?
There we go.
Geez, excuse me.
As we enter, thank you, madam. As we enter our second month of military actions when it comes to the Ukraine war at the moment of the northern aggression of the Russians. I just had to throw that in there. I saw that in a Twitter account. As of today, 2 additional generals in the Donbass and the Odessa regions were killed from the Russian side. I said those names correctly. That is a total of 10 Russian generals that have been killed in the last 30 days. As of our internal sources that we do have actually in this war, there's 10 left. We started the war with 20 Russian generals. We are down to 10. This is the reason. This is also a big reason why they're having such difficulties when it comes to their supply lines. So at the moment, the secondary offensive is occurring in the eastern and southern parts of Ukraine. And as of today, Polish heavy tanks and American heavy equipment were arriving into the Donbass regions. So Putin made a comment earlier today that he is no longer interested in peace talks, and you now see a full-flooded war going on in the eastern regions. So let's see if the Russians or if the Ukrainians are able to hold out. But at the moment, the West is still holding on. I think a full cancellation of oil, Russian oil and natural gas is probably going to happen. And you're seeing now that if we had a legitimate gas and natural gas and oil like concept as a nation, we would be actually able to assist them a lot more. About 3 weeks into the administration, a LNG plant was canceled that was supposed to be built in Pennsylvania that would have came online a week ago. Wow. And so these are the things that people just don't understand, that you can't just turn it on when you want. These are long-term consequences that occur when you don't have an energy plan. We want to go to zero carbon emissions. Well, how do you do that with almost a $30 trillion economy? Like, that's impossible. And so we're seeing the ramifications now. But again, we are down to 10 generals in Russia, so let's see how more they can pick off.
All right, real quick, our producer, Lindsay, shot me a great article here from Axios. Here are all the things that Elon Musk wants to change about Twitter. So an edit button, long-form tweets, which is nice because threads are annoying. Spam bots and authentication. Yeah, that's cool. Open source algorithm as TweetDeck, which I loved the original TweetDeck. The TweetDeck today is still okay, but TweetDeck was amazing. I used to have probably like 15 columns open. In fact, I don't know if you remember when David Jolly ran for Congress, the reason I caught that kid who was destroying his yard signs was because of TweetDeck. I had a Twitter column running, FL13 as a hashtag, and the kid was stupid enough to post a picture of himself picking up and destroying his yard signs. I reported him to the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, and the kid got spooked, shut off his Twitter account, deleted it, just went ghost.
That is very interesting.
The open source algorithm. He is thinking of doing that. Yeah.
Content moderation. All right. So, of course, there's got to be some moderation. And that looks about like that's about it. So I think that's a great start. Unbiased hot seat question here. Now that we're done with our
I don't know why you get so happy when you do that.
Because, okay, so.
Your eyes light up everything. I'm like, oh my God, here it comes.
Do you believe the American public is still paying attention to what's happening in the Ukraine?
To some extent. I think to some extent.
Right, but you're saying like the interest is kind of waning, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay, that's what we were kind of debating this.
It's not a debate. I think it was like in the high 60s.
No.
Of Americans.
It's not whether or not Americans care. Yes, Americans care.
If an American can point on a map where Ukraine is, that's like a lot, right?
Well,
there.
and I don't think that's happening.
I think
Well, it's just under Belarus.
no. When the Russians invaded Georgia, someone was like, "Atlanta? No, not that Georgia. The other Georgia."
That's right.
Also,
Wait, which St. Petersburg are we talking about?
Also, we have a lot of commies in St. Petersburg. Another thing is that the Americans
And in
are going to
Brown County.
open the embassy back up in Kyiv. So, like, things are really starting to move diplomatically back into the sway of the Ukrainians.
My point was just that we tend to lose. We tend to lose our attention.
When it started,
for,
I think you're right. People were expecting a 72-hour deal. Like,
Yeah.
Putin's
Yeah.
going to kind of roll
That's
his
exactly
tanks
what people
in, and I tell people that Biden's foreign policy success is the bravery of the Ukrainian people.
Oh, yeah.
And he's getting no credit for it either. But
And
it's
I don't
so
know that he
weird.
deserves it.
And I don't. Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's been tiptoeing around it, and he's allowing someone else to fight that battle.
He certainly. There's things that happen, I know, in foreign policy that are not championed in the press. So it did appear that he was late to the game for sure. It seems like after the United States got engaged that there was, I'm not a foreign policy expert either, but it seems like there were probably some good things that happened.
Yeah.
But we were really late to the game, and we'll see how it plays out.
but that's also been just part of our nature. I mean, that's historically been the case.
Yeah.
I mean, if
in foreign policy terms, Americans are like Spanish people. Like we'll get there about 45 minutes to an hour late. However,
once it's hot and heavy,
but we'll
once
stay
it's
the
hot
whole
and
time.
heavy, that's
We're gonna
right.
stay the whole time, and we're gonna close it out.
That's right.
And there's no telling what'll happen in between.
A lot of coquito.
Yeah, no kidding. All right. We want to go ahead and start to bring the show in for a close. Thank you, everybody, for watching The Yard Sign, the most important relevant podcast in Florida politics. Jamie Miller joining us tonight, along with Anibal David Cabrera. Don't forget, if you haven't done so, and usually I kind of drill this throughout the show, but we just had so much to cover. You can catch the audio version of our podcast on your favorite on your favorite podcast platform, over at the Tech Overlords at Google, Apple, Spotify, Audible, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Odyssey, and Samsung podcast platforms. Look for The Yard Sign, and you can also find the video version of this show on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, and so look for those as well. We want to thank the Community Patriots for their support. Again, if you are one of these people just bursting at the seams because of what's happening politically, both here in Hillsborough County, in Florida, in the United States, go out there, get active, take part in your community, take part in the upcoming elections. The Community Patriots doing an amazing job. They're a nonpartisan organization, but they are constitutionally founded and doing an incredible job of getting the community engaged. So check them out at community-patriots.com, community-patriots.com. One of their leaders, Kim Davis, who's been on the show before, actually has given us the red alert on a lawsuit that's coming to Hillsborough County's school board about their redistricting. So keep an eye on that, as that's going to be hitting the news very soon in a very big way. And she's very much involved on the education side of things. But again, if you want to look for a place to get involved, Community Patriots, Hillsborough County, Pinellas County, or maybe you want to start your own Community Patriots, maybe down in Sarasota, go to community-patriots.com. That's community-patriots.com. One last thing, Anibal. Just go.
Good job. The 2022
Mr. Mayor, where's my close-up?
French election. I'm ready for my closest, Mr. Dupree. Had their presidential election with Emmanuel Macron winning at 58.5%.
Macarons for everybody.
And Maria Le Pen. I knew you were going to go there. You're such a...
Pencils only, no Le Pens.
Anyways, Maria Le Pen at 41.5. This is actually the closest margin they've ever had, and the least amount of people voting in a French election. So
the Le Pens have been in every election for what, the past 6 decades?
Ridiculous that we're having to have this conversation.
Oh my gosh.
Her father, yes, ran about 7 cycles ago and lost, and now she is taking
Every
the
cycle,
mantle.
in every presidential cycle, there's been a Le Pen
There has
for
been
like the last 70 years.
There has been a Le Pen in almost every
crazy.
single one.
It's so nuts. How about you, Mr. Miller? Thank you again for making the drive up from beautiful Sarasota. Got to come down,
Love it.
and we
Yeah.
got to. I haven't been down there in a while. I got to get back down there.
Let me know. We'll go out on the boat.
Yeah,
hang around.
man,
I'll show you.
sign me up.
I'll
God,
show you
I'm
the
already-
city from the water instead of
I know.
all the other good things.
Normally, I just do a little rotunda.
Yeah,
and,
but thank you for having me.
The rotunda's barely even there. Okay.
Anibal, thank you. I appreciate
thank
it being
you.
on.
It was like that. However, I want to jab you real quick. What is going on with the construction in downtown Sarasota? Oh my God. It is a nightmare right now.
It's blown up like everywhere else. in
And
Florida.
where's the statue? Where's the harassment statue?
the Me Too statue?
Well, it is out in front of Marina Jack's.
I didn't go that far.
So yeah, so it's it kind of moved, needed to move because of that huge roundabout, and that's kind of, I'm sure, the chaos that you're referring to.
Kudos to the development, but my goodness, that is a lot of construction. It's blowing up.
Yeah, it's a jewel on the West Coast for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And we certainly love it. And I referred to it earlier. It's one of the places that is the quickest. Certainly, if you live here in the Brandon area, you probably can make it to Siesta Key Beach as fast or quicker than you can Clearwater.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Because the
Yeah.
difference between the interstate and the beach is only about 4 miles, and
Yeah.
it's until you get to the bridge, depending on the day.
Sure.
You're
very
4
true.
minutes to
Yeah,
the bridge.
yeah.
So you really kind of don't have to go through that. So I know a lot of people who live in the Tampa area, especially if you're near I-75, who frequent Sarasota beaches. So come on down. We love to have you. Keep buying houses. Send your parents. Send your parents. You should move there. I moved there 15 years ago. I said I beat
Man.
all my friends by 35 years.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh my gosh.
We
and
enjoy a metropolitan city. So
Yes, well,
one of
a little bit
my
different.
one of my favorite accomplishments from when I was at Senator Rubio's office was helping with the renourishment of I think it was Lido Beach,
Absolutely. Yeah.
there with the city of Sarasota, and that was a team effort, and got to kind of run the victory lap with the senator there for that, and
sand is important.
it was bad, man. When I got to see it, I got to see it firsthand, and then to see it, about a year or so later, and renourished and looking beautiful, and tons of people enjoying it. It was.
Yeah,
it's pretty fulfilling.
Yeah, it is. The beaches down there are incredible.
Yeah.
So I propose that we just cut Manatee in half, and you guys take one half of Manatee County. We'll take the other.
Why do you want a hat? Why do you want?
Well, where is the?
Can we pick
There
which
actually
house?
is an argument.
We'll give you the whole
There
thing.
actually is an argument right now about Longboat Key, because Longboat
my
Key
gosh,
is
that's
separated
right.
into 2 counties.
Yes.
and
Oh,
so
wow.
there's a whole brouhaha down there. But I know
Yeah.
I don't want to take your listeners' time talking about a Sarasota Manatee
We'll do that in a future
struggle.
episode.
We're not CNN. We're not going to cover things that no one's.
Can we take IMG Academy? I like what they're doing down at IMG.
They are doing some incredible
I
things.
do some work down there, and those guys are a lot of fun. And
Well, if you come down, we certainly can meet.
cool. Love it.
Love to.
Thank you,
you
everybody,
for
for
having me.
watching. We'll see you back here next Monday night, 7-ish, with plenty more to talk about. On behalf of Jamie Miller, Anibal, David Cabrera, I'm Jonny Torres. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.